Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. We take a stack of sources, extract the most important nuggets, and then unpack them with just enough humor and surprising facts to keep you hooked.
Exactly. And today we're plunging into the life of one of American history's most complex and, frankly, most misunderstood figures, Ulysses S. Grant.
He really is. He's the celebrated general who quite literally saved the Union, but also a president whose administration was, well, notoriously plagued by scandal.
And on a personal level, his life was just this powerful testament to both incredible resilience and profound, really devastating financial struggles.
Absolutely. His historical reputation has been a complete roller coaster, from national hero to a figure of scorn, and now, in our modern era, a really fascinating rehabilitation.
It's a compelling journey, truly. You see him as this symbol of unity at the end of the Civil War, then grappling with the immense challenges of a divided nation during Reconstruction, all while facing these personal battles that, honestly, would have broken lesser individuals. Understanding Grant means confronting the full spectrum of the human experience and how that shapes a leader.
Definitely. So, our mission today, drawing from a rich stack of biographical excerpts and historical analyses you've provided, is to go beyond those easy headlines.
Yeah, get into the weeds a bit.
We're here to uncover the surprising facts, the pivotal moments, and the enduring insights from Grant's life. We want to understand not just what happened, but why it matters, and how his story continues to resonate today, offering you that shortcut to a truly well-informed perspective.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's unpack this from the very beginning. The man we know as Ulysses S. Grant wasn't actually born with those famous initials, was he?
That's right. No, he entered the world on April 27th, 1822, in Point Pleasant, Ohio, as Hiram Ulysses Grant.
Hiram Ulysses.
Yeah. His parents were Jesse Root Grant and Hannah Simpson Grant. And it's an interesting detail that his father, Jesse, was not only a strong supporter of the Whig Party, a major political force back then, but also, quite significantly, a fervent abolitionist, a really strong opponent of slavery.
And that stance, it really foreshadows some of Grant's own later convictions and actions, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It sets a kind of moral backdrop for his upbringing.
And the name change itself is such a human, almost accidental detail that permanently altered his identity. He went by Hiram Ulysses, but when he was nominated to West Point by Representative Thomas L. Hammer, there was a clerical error.
A mistake on the form.
Exactly. He was enlisted as U.S. Grant, and the story goes that he just stuck with it to avoid having the initials HUG on his trunk, which he, feared would lead to endless teasing.
Can you blame him? HUG at West Point? Yeah, maybe not.
It's a small, relatable moment that forever changed how the world would know him.
And it led to another interesting identifier. Among his Army colleagues, he quickly became known as Sam, because U.S. could also stand for Uncle Sam.
Ah, okay.
So these seemingly minor personal details, they really add layers to the legendary figure he became, showing us the boy and the man before the icon.
Growing up in Georgetown, Ohio, with 5 younger siblings, he sounds like he was a quiet kid. He went to various schools, but there was one truly remarkable talent that emerged early on, something almost prodigious.
His horsemanship.
Definitely.
From a very young age, Grant developed this unusual, almost innate ability to ride and manage horses. It wasn't just a skill, it was apparently a profound connection.
Right.
His father, recognizing this exceptional talent, put him to work driving supply wagons. And this foundational ability, cultivated during his youth, would later prove absolutely invaluable in his military career. His understanding of cavalry, logistics, it became a defining strength.
It wasn't just writing, it was like a deep comprehension of these animals that few possess.
Yeah, exactly. And that understanding translated directly to military effectiveness later.
It's also striking that, unlike his siblings, his Methodist parents didn't force him to attend church. He prayed privately and never officially joined any denomination, which led some, including his own son apparently, to view him as agnostic.
Yeah, that definitely hints at an independent spirit from an early age, doesn't it? A man who thought for himself, rather than simply accepting received wisdom.
And politically, before the Civil War, he was pretty apolitical, but he did acknowledge he would have identified with the Whigs if he had any strong sympathies, mostly because of his father's influence, it seems.
That independent streak and his sort of apolitical nature before the war are key to understanding his later decisions, I think. He wasn't driven by partisan ideology early on, but by a deeper, evolving sense of duty and what he believed was fundamentally right for the country.
A moral compass, rather than just party affiliation.
Right. That often guided his most crucial choices.
Which leads us to West Point. He ended up there at his father's insistence, nominated in the spring of 1839. But it wasn't exactly his dream job, was it? He was a reluctant cadet.
Not at all. He was initially indifferent, maybe even somewhat resentful of military life. He even reconsidered leaving within a year.
Really?
Yeah, though he later wrote that he grew to like this place very much. But despite his personal reservations, he excelled in practical skills, notably earning a reputation as the most proficient horseman in his class.
Which goes back to that early gift, right?
Exactly. A clear testament to that talent we discussed.
And here's another surprising facet of his personality that often gets overlooked. He spent more time reading books from the library than his academic texts, and even studied under the Romantic artist Robert Walter Weir. He produced 9 surviving artworks.
That offers such a vivid glimpse into his inner world, doesn't it? It shows a contemplative, perhaps even artistic side, far beyond the military discipline we typically associate with him.
Yeah, it adds a whole other dimension.
It truly speaks to a curiosity and intellectual depth often overshadowed by his military achievements. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a learner and an observer, traits that would serve him well in understanding complex situations later on.
His time there, even with that initial reluctance, clearly shaped his strategic mind and broadened his perspective.
Definitely. He graduated on June 30, 1843, ranking 21st out of 39 in his class. Not stellar, but solid.
And he still planned to resign after his 4-year term. In fact, he famously said that one of the happiest days of his life was the day he left the academy.
Right, alongside the day he left the presidency, which says something.
It really does. Yet, despite his incredible horsemanship, he was assigned to the 4th Infantry Regiment, not the cavalry, which seems odd.
A bit counterintuitive, yeah. His first post was Jefferson Barracks near St. Louis, Missouri, then the nation's largest military base in the West. He was apparently content with his commander, but still openly looked forward to a civilian teaching career.
It really shows how much his life took an unexpected turn away from his initial desires.
This early period is crucial because it underscores that Grant wasn't a born military man in the conventional sense. He effectively stumbled into it. His initial desires were for a quiet civilian life.
And this reluctance provides such a powerful counterpoint to his later emergence as this military genius. He was happy enough with his command, but he truly envisioned a life outside of the army.
A life that personal circumstances would soon dramatically alter.
So his plans for a civilian life were well underway, but then, as it often does, love intervened. He met Julia Dent in 1844, the sister of a West Point friend, and they quickly became engaged.
And they married on August 22, 1848, at Julia's home in St. Louis. But this wedding had a very telling detail, didn't it? Something that foreshadowed the Great Schism to come.
It did. Grant's staunchly abolitionist father strongly disapproved because the Dents owned slaves.
Right, and neither of Grant's parents attended the wedding. This deeply personal family division over slavery just illustrates the profound, pervasive societal schisms that were already tearing at the fabric of the nation, even within individual households.
And that detail about his best man.
Oh, yeah. In a poignant detail of shared history, his best man was James Longstreet, Julia's cousin, who would later serve as a prominent Confederate general.
And would ultimately surrender to Grant at Appomattox. Just incredible.
You really couldn't make it up. So after marriage, with a wife and eventually a growing family to support, they had 4 children: Frederick, Ulysses Jr., Buck, Ellen, Nellie, and Jesse II.
Right.
Grant obtained an extension to his leave and then decided to remain in the Army, altering his earlier plans for a civilian life.
It was a pivotal choice that, in hindsight, dramatically shaped his entire future and, by extension, the nation's.
Absolutely. Had he not decided to stay in the Army for his family, the course of American history might have been very, very different. It's a recurring theme with Grant. Personal circumstances often pushed him into roles where his latent talents could then shine, even if he didn't initially seek them out.
And those talents truly began to be forged in the crucible of the Mexican-American War. His unit was stationed in Louisiana, and he experienced combat for the first time at the Battle of Palo Alto in May 1846.
He served as regimental quartermaster, a logistical role, but he really yearned for a combat role, eventually leading a charge at the Battle of Resaca de la Palma.
And he even demonstrated that remarkable equestrian ability at the Battle of Monterey, carrying a dispatch by hanging off the side of his horse to avoid snipers.
That's a cinematic image, isn't it? Showcasing his innate bravery and skill. And it speaks volumes about his character. For his bravery at Molino del Rey, he was breveted, given that temporary honorary promotion to first lieutenant,
Okay.
and then captain at San Cosme, where he cleverly directed men to reassemble a mountain howitzer in a church steeple to bombard Mexican troops below. These weren't just promotions. They were clear recognitions of his initiative and tactical thinking under fire.
Demonstrating his natural aptitude for command. He really emerged from this war as a seasoned officer, studying the tactics of Major General Zachary Taylor and General Winfield Scott.
Two of the era's most respected commanders. He later wrote in his memoirs that this is how he learned much about military leadership, particularly identifying his own style with Taylor's more pragmatic approach.
But what's truly fascinating here is how his role as an assistant quartermaster, initially disliked, proved to be such an invaluable training ground.
It's a classic example, isn't it? How seemingly mundane duties can provide profound lessons. That quartermaster role taught him the critical importance of military supply routes, transportation, logistics.
All the behind-the-scenes stuff that wins wars.
Exactly. He recognized that wars could be won or lost by factors far beyond the immediate battlefield, particularly the challenge of provisioning a large mobile army operating in hostile territory. This understanding of the logistical underpinnings of warfare would become a hallmark of his immense success in the Civil War.
Gave him an edge few other generals possessed. And he didn't just come away with military experience. In retrospect, Grant viewed the Mexican War as morally unjust, didn't he?
He did. He believed its territorial gains were designed primarily to expand slavery. He even opined that the Civil War, then still years away, was divine punishment for U.S. aggression against Mexico.
Wow. That really shows his evolving moral compass, even at that early stage, and his deepening discomfort with the institution of slavery, despite his personal connections to it through Julia's family.
It truly highlights his deep capacity for introspection and a developing moral conscience regarding slavery. This internal conflict and conviction would greatly inform his actions later as president.
After the war, his assignments took him and Julia through a series of increasingly isolated postings. Detroit, then Madison Barracks, a desolate outpost in upstate New York.
Sounds grim.
Yeah, before he was sent to Panama and then to the Oregon Territory. While in Panama during a devastating cholera epidemic, he even demonstrated remarkable humanitarian action. He organized a field hospital, personally nursed the sick when orderlies protested, earned high praise for it.
It speaks to his underlying character, his willingness to step up in a crisis, and his compassion. However, this period also saw the beginning of significant personal struggles. He tried several business ventures but failed, losing, $800 to a dishonest partner,
A lot of money back then.
equivalent to maybe $23,000 today. And he also witnessed firsthand white agents cheating local Native Americans, saw their devastation by diseases, which profoundly developed his empathy for their plight. Another thread that would become critical during his presidency.
He was promoted to captain in 1853 and assigned to command at Fort Humboldt in California. But separated from his family for long stretches, a common issue in the frontier army, he began to drink.
Yeah, this is a difficult part of his story. His commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Robert C. Buchanan, reprimanded him, basically told him to resign or reform.
An ultimatum.
Pretty much. Grant, facing this, resigned, effective July 31st, 1854. He later admitted that the vice of intemperance had not a little to do with my decision to resign.
But he faced no court-martial, and the War Department's official record simply stated, nothing stands against his good name.
Right. Historians continue to debate the full extent of his drinking during this period, but it was undeniably a very difficult chapter for him. His personal struggles, exacerbated by the isolation from his beloved family and a profound lack of fulfillment in his military duties at the time, it all combined to create a period of deep vulnerability.
It's a testament to his later strength and, the enduring support of Julia that he overcame these challenges and emerged a stronger leader.
Definitely. For 7 years then, from 1854 to 1861, Grant struggled financially to support his growing family. His father, Jesse, offered him a place in the family's thriving leather business.
Which sounds like a lifeline.
It does, but Grant declined because it required Julia and the children to live separately, a choice that really speaks volumes about his dedication to his family.
So he turned to farming, even with the help of Julia's slave, Dan, but it was unsuccessful. He even resorted to selling firewood on St. Louis street corners. That just paints such a picture of his desperation and the depths of his poverty during this period.
It's a stark, almost unbelievable contrast to the man who would later lead armies and a nation. In 1856, they built a home called Hardscraddle on Julia's father's farm, which Julia herself described as an unattractive cabin.
Hard scrabble. The name says it all, really.
It does. During the Panic of 1857, a severe economic downturn, he even pawned his gold watch just to buy Christmas gifts for his children. This period of poverty and civilian struggle is crucial context for understanding the man who would later lead the Union Army.
It speaks volumes about his resilience and his capacity for reinvention, born out of sheer necessity and that powerful drive to provide for his family.
Absolutely. And this era also raises that important question. How did his personal first-hand experience with slavery, through Julia's family, influence his later actions as president?
Especially on civil rights.
Right. In 1858, he acquired a slave, William Jones, from his father-in-law. Although not an abolitionist at the time, Grant disliked slavery intensely and crucially could not bring himself to force Jones to work, which is significant. And then in March 1859, Grant freed Jones by a manumission deed, that legal document granting freedom, an act potentially worth at least $1,000 back then.
Equivalent to maybe $35,000 today. A huge sum for someone struggling like he was.
It was a deeply personal decision that put his emerging moral values above significant financial gain, especially given his precarious financial situation. This act reveals a moral core that was fundamentally at odds with the institution of slavery, even before the war definitively shaped his views.
Shows he was willing to make a personal sacrifice for a deeply held belief. He continued to struggle through these years, though. Failed in a real estate partnership, got passed over for a county engineer position.
Apparently because of perceived Democratic sympathies, stemming from his father-in-law's politics.
But then, in April 1860, a glimmer of hope. He moved his family to Galena, Illinois, joining his father's leather goods business.
And within months, he paid off his debts and established himself as a reputable citizen. It was a brief period of stability, a moment of respite, before everything changed again.
And the nation itself plunged into chaos.
This period of civilian struggles and poverty, it offers such crucial context for understanding the man who would later lead the Union Army. It speaks profoundly to his resilience, his capacity for reinvention, and his deeply personal motivations. He knew what it meant to face adversity and overcome it.
A quality that would soon be tested on the largest stage imaginable. And change it did, dramatically. April 12, 1861, Confederate troops attacked Fort Sumter. The Civil War began.
Lincoln immediately called for volunteers. Grant, who had actually voted for Democrat James Buchanan in '56 and preferred Stephen Douglas in '60, fearing a civil war.
Right, he wasn't initially aligned with the Republicans.
No, but now he was profoundly stirred by patriotic resolve. He attended recruitment meetings and was particularly moved by John Aaron Rawlins' speech, writing, "We have a government and laws and a flag, and they must all be sustained. There are but two parties now, traitors and patriots."
Wow, that statement marks such a definitive and powerful shift in his perspective. From being largely apolitical and even fearful of civil war, he now saw the conflict in stark, moral terms.
Prioritizing the preservation of the Union and the rule of law above all else. This newfound clarity of purpose, unburdened by earlier partisan leanings, would define his military career.
After initial rejections for a senior rank, a testament to how far his reputation had perhaps fallen after his resignation, he was appointed military aide to Governor Richard Yates. He effectively mustered 10 regiments.
Then, with the crucial aid of Congressman Elihu B. Washburn, he was appointed colonel of the 21st Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment in June 1861, and he immediately brought much-needed order and discipline to the raw unit.
Just a few months later, August 5th, with Washburn's continued support, Grant was appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers and placed in command of the District of Southeastern Missouri. His meteoric rise, born of crisis, had truly begun.
His ability to quickly instill discipline and organization in a volunteer regiment was immediately recognized as invaluable. This early success, demonstrating his innate leadership qualities, rapidly set the stage for his emergence as a commander who could bring order and effectiveness where others struggled.
And he wasted no time making his mark, displaying a boldness that would become his trademark. Without waiting for his superior, Major General Fremont's reply, he advanced on Paducah, Kentucky.
A strategically vital point.
Took it without a fight on September 6, 1861. And he famously assured the citizens, "I have come among you not as your enemy, but as your friend," understanding the vital importance of keeping Kentucky neutral.
Smart political move, too. Then, on November 7, 1861, he engaged Confederates at the Battle of Belmont. Though the Union Army initially took the camp, they were forced into a chaotic retreat.
But despite the tactical retreat, the battle gave his largely inexperienced volunteers much-needed confidence and combat experience.
These early actions, marked by initiative and pragmatism, showed his willingness to seize opportunities and his keen understanding of the political dimensions of the war. He was a general who learned rapidly and effectively.
Which brings us to a crucial point in his early military career. Forts Henry and Donelson. Grant and his Lieutenant Colonel James B. McPherson planned this daring strategy.
Right, to bypass the heavily fortified Confederate stronghold of Columbus and instead move swiftly against Fort Henry on the Tennessee River, then Fort Donelson on the Cumberland.
The goal: open both rivers for Union access deep into the Confederate heartland. An audacious plan.
Very. Admiral Andrew Hullfoot's gunboats forced Fort Henry's surrender on February 6 before Grant's infantry even arrived. A quick victory.
But the real test came at Fort Donelson.
Indeed. After securing Fort Henry, Grant immediately ordered an assault on Fort Donelson. The battle was fierce, initial Union setbacks, a desperate Confederate attack threatened to break his lines.
High stake.
Absolutely. It was here that Grant famously rode back, rallied his commanders with decisive orders, and blocked the crucial Nashville Road, effectively trapping the Confederates back within the fort.
And the outcome was legendary. February 16th, Confederate generals John B. Floyd and Gideon J. Pillow, seeing no escape, fled under cover of darkness, leaving Simon Bolivar Buckner in command.
Buckner, a former West Point classmate of Grant's, no less. He submitted to Grant's unequivocal demand for unconditional and immediate surrender.
And that was it. The first major Union victory of the war, capturing over 12,000 Confederates, opening critical waterways.
This moment solidified his reputation. The Northern press, playing off his initials, immediately began calling him Unconditional Surrender Grant.
Became his iconic nickname.
Perfectly encapsulating his resolute approach. But even with such a crucial victory, political intrigue was brewing. General Henry W. Halleck, Grant's superior, accused him of neglect and inefficiency.
Even brought up the drinking rumors again.
Yeah, claimed, "Word has just reached me that Grant has resumed his bad habits." But President Lincoln famously dismissed these critics, saying, "I can't spare this man. He fights."
Which truly shows Lincoln's keen judgment of character and military effectiveness, prioritizing results over rumor. He understood Grant delivered.
Exactly. This was a critical endorsement that allowed Grant to continue his rise. However, his next major engagement, Shiloh, was a far costlier victory, a brutal awakening.
Reinstated and promoted to Major General of Volunteers, Grant advanced with the Army of the Tennessee. Stationed at Pittsburg Landing, his largely inexperienced troops didn't prepare defensive fortifications.
And his subordinate, William T. Sherman, dismissed reports of nearby Confederates. Big mistake.
Huge. On April 6, 1862, Confederate forces under Generals Albert Sidney Johnston and P.G.T. Beauregard launched a devastating surprise attack near Shiloh Church, forced a confused Union retreat. It was chaos, a shocking bloodbath.
Shiloh was the costliest battle in American history to that point. A staggering 23,746 casualties on both sides.
That evening, in heavy rain, Sherman found Grant under a tree, apparently unfazed. Sherman said, "Well, Grant, we've had the devil's own day of it, haven't we?"
To which Grant famously replied, "Yes, lick 'em tomorrow, though."
Wow. Just steely resolve.
That exchange perfectly captures Grant's unshakable resolve and mental toughness in the face of absolute disaster. Bolstered by reinforcements that night, Grant counterattacked the next day, regaining the field and securing a Union victory. But the battle, though won, truly changed his perspective on the war.
And this is where we see that crucial shift in his strategic thinking. Grant realized, then indeed I gave up all idea of saving the Union except by complete conquest.
A significant strategic turning point, moving from seeking limited engagements to understanding the grim necessary truth of total war.
Despite briefly being hailed a hero, he was soon mired in controversy. The Northern press castigated him for the high casualties and, yet again, accused him of drunkenness claims later refuted by those with him.
Discouraged, Grant considered resigning, but Sherman, his loyal subordinate, convinced him to stay, and Lincoln continued his unwavering support.
Shiloh was a brutal lesson, but a necessary one for Grant. It hardened his resolve and profoundly shaped his strategy for the rest of the war.
He now understood the Confederacy wouldn't just give up. It had to be decisively defeated. That meant a willingness to accept high costs and a relentless pursuit of the enemy.
This new, unyielding resolve was put to the ultimate test in the Vicksburg Campaign. The Union capture of Vicksburg, the last Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River, was absolutely vital.
Split the Confederacy in two, control the essential waterway. a hugely complex, protracted campaign.
And Confederate cavalry raids on Grant's extended supply lines forced him to consider and adopt a new, audacious strategy, foraging the land.
Living off what the region provided, rather than exposing long Union supply lines to constant attack. Innovative and incredibly bold for its time, breaking military convention.
It was a pragmatic and necessary adaptation, wasn't it? Showing his increasing mastery of logistics in a dynamic and hostile environment.
Absolutely. He understood a mobile army couldn't always rely on traditional, vulnerable supply lines, especially deep in enemy territory. A calculated risk that paid off handsomely.
And during this campaign, another powerful development unfolded. Fugitive African-American slaves poured into Grant's district.
Seeking freedom behind Union lines. On his own initiative, Grant set up pragmatic contraband camps administered by a chaplain, John Eaton.
And these freed slaves picked cotton, which was then shipped north, directly aiding the Union war effort. Lincoln, seeing its success, approved this program.
Grant also incorporated freed black labor into the Union Army and Navy for canal work, further integrating them into the war effort. A clear sign of his growing commitment to emancipation and the utility of black contributions.
This is a crucial aspect of his character, that pragmatism combined with his growing commitment to emancipation, seeing their potential not just as beneficiaries, but as vital contributors to victory.
Moving from a passive stance to actively empowering them. However, during this period, he also had that deeply regrettable moment. General Order Number 11.
Right. December 17th, 1862. He issued this highly controversial order expelling Jews as a class from his military district due to complaints about speculators.
Though it's important to note, most illegal traders were not Jewish. Lincoln quickly and decisively rescinded the order.
And Grant later described issuing this order as one of his biggest regrets. During his presidency, he made significant amends, appointing more than 50 Jewish people to federal office.
It's a dark mark, but one he actively tried to correct and learn from. It highlights the complexities and prejudices of the time and Grant's own journey of understanding. His later actions showed genuine remorse.
Grant assumed overall command of the Vicksburg campaign in January 1863. His plan to attack Vicksburg from downriver was incredibly risky, distancing his army from supply lines, forcing reliance on foraging.
Admiral David Dixon Porter's gunboats successfully ran the Vicksburg batteries, and Grant's army then executed this brilliant series of maneuvers, capturing Jackson, defeating Pemberton at Champion Hill, forcing a retreat into Vicksburg.
After 2 failed assaults on the fortified city, the Union settled in for a grueling 7-week siege. Grant occasionally drank during quiet periods, grappling with the immense pressure.
And he decisively removed Major General John A. McClernand from command due to ongoing rivalry and insubordination. He wasn't afraid to make tough calls.
Pemberton finally surrendered Vicksburg to Grant on July 4, 1863, a hugely symbolic date.
The fall of Vicksburg was monumental, a true turning point. Gave Union forces complete control of the Mississippi, effectively splitting the Confederacy. Major strategic blow, huge morale boost.
And by this time, Grant's political sympathies fully coincided with the radical Republicans' aggressive prosecution of the war and, critically, the emancipation of slaves.
He now saw these as intertwined and absolutely essential for achieving total victory and a lasting peace.
His success continued to mount, culminating in another decisive victory at Chattanooga. October 16, 1863, Lincoln promoted Grant to Major General in the regular army, gave him command of the newly formed Division of the Mississippi.
Encompassing multiple armies. After the devastating Union defeat at Chickamauga, the Army of the Cumberland was effectively besieged in Chattanooga. Grant immediately arrived. Forces under Major General Joseph Hooker opened a critical supply line, the battle above the clouds.
Grant then planned for Sherman's army to assault Missionary Ridge. But on November 25th, after Sherman's efforts stalled, Grant ordered Major General George Henry Thomas's forces to advance to rifle pits at the base of Missionary Ridge.
And then, in this unplanned, audacious move, 4 divisions, led by Sheridan and Thomas J. Wood, against orders, continued the charge up the incredibly steep 45-degree slope.
Kept going.
Captured the Confederate entrenchments, forced complete retreat, an amazing moment of battlefield initiative.
This decisive battle gave the Union control of Tennessee and, crucially, opened Georgia, the Confederate heartland, to Union invasion. Another clear demonstration of his ability to adapt, capitalize on unexpected successes.
And leverage the initiative of his subordinates, even when they deviated from the letter of his orders.
By 1864, Grant's consistent victories and relentless approach had made him indispensable. March 2nd, 1864, Lincoln took the unprecedented step of promoting Grant to lieutenant general.
a rank previously held only by George Washington. This cemented his position as the Union's top military leader, command over all Union armies.
And he quickly established a remarkably good working relationship with Lincoln, who, having found his general, allowed him to devise his own overarching strategy.
That trust, forged in the fires of war, was absolutely crucial. Lincoln famously gave Grant the freedom to take all the rest you think you need and don't bother me with details. He'd found his general.
Someone who would relentlessly pursue the enemy without needing constant oversight. Grant, in turn, deeply respected Lincoln's leadership, a powerful partnership.
Absolutely. Grant then implemented a truly grand strategy, a coordinated effort on an unprecedented scale. Scrapped a risky invasion of North Carolina, planned 5 coordinated Union offensives.
Designed to prevent Confederate armies from shifting troops to reinforce each other, he and Major General George Meade would make a direct frontal attack on Lee's Army of Northern Virginia.
While Sherman, now commanding all Western armies, would destroy Joseph E. Johnston's Army of Tennessee and take Atlanta, Grant commanded a staggering 533,000 battle-ready troops spread out over an 18-mile front.
A logistical and strategic challenge unlike any seen before. This was total war, designed to overwhelm the Confederacy.
It was a monumental strategic shift, designed to relentlessly pressure the Confederacy on multiple fronts. This vision was ultimately the decisive factor in breaking their will to fight.
The Overland Campaign was the grim centerpiece of this strategy, a series of brutal, continuous battles in Virginia during May and June 1864, characterized by incredibly high casualties and Grant's unwavering, almost terrifying determination.
Initial efforts by other Union generals, Sigel and Butler, failed, leaving Grant to directly confront Lee. The Battle of the Wilderness, 3 days in dense, tangled woods, a nightmare.
Resulted in estimated casualties of 17,666 Union and 11,125 Confederate troops. Huge numbers.
And rather than retreating, as previous Union commanders had done, Grant famously flanked Lee's army to the southeast, trying to wedge his forces between Lee and Richmond at Spotsylvania Courthouse.
Lee's army, with its uncanny ability to anticipate, arrived first, leading to a costly 13-day battle. May 12, Grant's attempt to break through Lee's Muleshoe salient resulted in one of the bloodiest assaults of the war, the Bloody Angle.
Unable to break Lee's lines, Grant again relentlessly flanked the rebels, pressing on. This campaign was a grinding, brutal test of wills and resources. Grant was willing to accept heavy casualties, knowing he could eventually replace his losses, while Lee couldn't.
His relentless advance, even facing immense bloodshed, was a stark strategic calculation designed to wear down and ultimately destroy Lee's army. War on a scale previously unimaginable in America.
And then came Cold Harbor on June 3rd, perhaps his most regrettable assault. The recent Bloody Wilderness campaign had hurt Confederate morale, and Grant hoped for a decisive breakthrough at Cold Harbor, a vital road hub.
Believed it could quickly end the war. But a crucial detail here. Grant had 2 corps in position, but his men were utterly exhausted after weeks of constant fighting.
He postponed the attack twice, inadvertently giving Lee crucial time to construct formidable, hastily built entrenchments overnight.
Compounding this, Grant and Meade didn't give specific coordinated orders, leaving critical tactical coordination to corps commanders, and Grant himself didn't fully realize the strength of Lee's prepared defenses.
It was a disastrous tactical error, one Grant would forever regret. Morning of June 3, over 100,000 Union men against Lee's 59,000, Grant launched a direct assault against well-entrenched Confederate lines.
The result was catastrophic. The Union suffered 12,000, 14,000 casualties in a matter of hours, compared to Lee's far lower 3,000, 5,000.
The unprecedented number of casualties heightened anti-war sentiment in the North, leading to many calling Grant the Butcher.
He later wrote in his memoirs, with deep regret, "I always regretted that the last assault at Cold Harbor was ever made." He wanted a truce to gather the wounded, but Lee insisted on a total truce, and tragically, most Union wounded died in the field during the delay.
A sobering reminder of the horrific human cost and the agonizing decisions. But Cold Harbor, despite its terrible cost, didn't deter Grant. It reinforced his conviction that direct frontal assaults against entrenched positions were too costly.
He adapted his tactics. Undetected by Lee, he executed a brilliant strategic maneuver, moving his entire army south of the James River, advancing toward Petersburg, Virginia's central railroad hub.
Initiating a grueling 9-month siege, this reflected Grant's willingness to adapt, shifting to a more patient attritional approach.
Meanwhile, Major General Philip Sheridan was assigned command of the Union Army of the Shenandoah, with Grant directing him to follow the enemy to their death in the valley.
Sheridan successfully disrupted Confederate supply lines and resources, employing a scorched earth policy. But even during the siege of Petersburg, there were major setbacks, like the infamous Battle of the Crater in July 1864.
Right. Grant reluctantly approved that bizarre plan to blow up Confederate trenches with gunpowder. Massive explosion, killed an entire Confederate regiment, created a huge breach.
But here's where leadership failed spectacularly. Poorly led Union troops, including black troops who suffered a large proportion of casualties, rushed into the crater instead of encircling it.
Became trapped, easy targets for recovering Confederates.
It was, as Grant himself admitted, a truly stupendous failure. He later pointedly blamed Major General Ambrose Burnside and Brigadier General James H. Ledlie in his memoirs, even testified against them.
Shows his willingness to hold commanders accountable, though, even those he'd previously supported. Commitment to effectiveness over personal loyalties.
Despite these setbacks, the broader strategic successes were piling up. Union forces captured Mobile Bay, Atlanta fell to Sherman, Union control of the Shenandoah Valley was secured, all ensuring Lincoln's re-election in November.
A crucial political victory. Sherman's march to the sea cut a devastating path through Georgia, crippling the Confederacy.
And General George Thomas smashed Confederate General John Bell Hood's army at Nashville. These coordinated campaigns systematically isolated Lee's forces. No hope of reinforcement.
By March 1865, Lee was trapped, his strength severely weakened, running out of reserves, facing mass desertions. A desperate attack at Fort Stedman resulted in 4,000 Confederate casualties, another Union victory. The end was truly in sight.
These comprehensive coordinated campaigns truly broke the back of the Confederacy. Grant's strategy of relentless, simultaneous pressure on all fronts proved decisive.
April 2nd, Grant ordered a general assault, finally forcing Lee to abandon Petersburg and Richmond. Sheridan's cavalry then brilliantly blocked Lee's escape route, cornering him.
Grant rode west to join Sheridan and received Lee's letter requesting a meeting to discuss surrender.
And so, April 9th, 1865, Grant and Lee met at Appomattox Courthouse. Grant, despite feeling sadness for a foe who had fought so long and valiantly, believed the Southern cause was one of the worst for which a people ever fought.
He wrote out incredibly generous surrender terms. Each officer and man will be allowed to return to his home, not to be disturbed by U.S. authorities so long as they observe their paroles and the laws in force where they may reside.
Lee immediately accepted, and Grant, in a remarkable gesture, even allowed Confederate troops to keep their horses for spring plowing.
This act of magnanimity was profound, a testament to Grant's foresight and desire for genuine reconciliation. Grant then ordered his troops to stop all celebration, famously saying, "The war is over, the rebels are our countrymen again."
A powerful call for unity, coming directly from the victorious general. Incredibly important. Set a compassionate tone for the difficult road ahead.
Aiming to heal a deeply divided nation, the remaining Confederate armies surrendered in the following weeks, officially ending the war.
The war was over, but the nation's trials were far from it. Just 5 days after Lee's surrender, April 14th, 1865, that date etched in infamy.
Grant and Julia declined Lincoln's invitation to Ford's Theater, planning instead to travel home. Many, including Grant himself, believed he had been a primary target in the conspiracy that led to Lincoln's assassination.
Grant was notified of the president's death, immediately summoned to Washington. He wept openly at Lincoln's funeral, later calling him the greatest man I have ever known.
Initially, he publicly expressed every reason to hope in Vice President Andrew Johnson's ability to run the government in its old channel.
It was a moment of immense national grief, shock, and profound uncertainty. Grant, as the undisputed commanding general, immediately became a crucial figure in the transition of power and the unfolding, tumultuous process of Reconstruction.
His initial optimism about Johnson, however, would soon be shattered.
Grant remained commander of the army, with duties including monitoring French troops in Mexico, overseeing Reconstruction implementation, supervising Indian wars in the West.
President Johnson, however, had a very different vision for the post-war South. He demanded Lee and his generals be tried for treason.
But Grant staunchly insisted they should not, citing the Appomattox amnesty and his personal guarantee. Charges against Lee were dropped, demonstrating Grant's unwavering commitment to the terms of surrender, even when it put him directly at odds with the president.
This early conflict was indicative of the brewing storm. On July 25, 1866, Congress, recognizing his service, promoted Grant to the newly created rank of General of the Army of the United States.
This promotion solidified his immense authority and perhaps inevitably became a significant point of contention with Johnson. Johnson's Reconstruction policy favored a speedy return of former Confederates to Congress.
Reinstating white leaders to power, effectively relegating black people to second-class citizenship, often with punitive black codes.
Grant was sent on a fact-finding mission to the South in late 1865. While initially sympathizing with some aspects of Johnson's report, Grant soon recommended continuing the Freedmen's Bureau, that federal agency providing aid to former slaves, which Johnson vehemently opposed.
And crucially, he believed the South needed continued federal government protection because its people were simply not ready for self-rule or to embrace equal rights for African Americans.
The relationship between Grant and Johnson began to break down significantly by February 1866. Johnson actively opposed Grant's closure of a disloyal newspaper and his vigorous enforcement of the Civil Rights Act of 1866.
A landmark piece of legislation passed over Johnson's veto. Johnson, attempting to leverage Grant's immense popularity, tried to bring him on his infamous swing around the circle tour to gain support for his lenient policies.
But Grant privately called Johnson's inflammatory speeches a national disgrace, and unable to tolerate them, left the tour early. A very public snub.
This public break was critical. On March 2, 1867, Congress, overriding Johnson's veto, passed the first of 3 Reconstruction Acts, placing former Confederate states under military control and using military officers to enforce federal policy.
Critically, Congress also passed the Command of the Army Act, specifically designed to protect Grant from removal or relocation and forcing Johnson to pass all military orders through him.
Effectively neutering Johnson's ability to undermine Reconstruction directly through the military.
The tension escalated dramatically with the Stanton controversy. August 1867, Johnson discharged Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, the last cabinet member friendly to the radical Republicans, without Senate approval, a direct challenge to Congress.
Johnson then appointed Grant as interim Secretary of War. Grant reluctantly accepted, not wanting the Army to fall under a more conservative appointee.
But when Congress voted to keep Stanton, asserting its authority, Grant told Johnson he would resign. Johnson, perhaps believing the law would be overturned, insisted he would assume Grant's legal responsibility.
Grant, however, true to his word and legal obligations, promptly surrendered the office back to Stanton. Johnson, with cabinet backing, publicly accused Grant of duplicity, leading to a complete and acrimonious break.
Public exchange of angry messages. This controversy ultimately led to Johnson's impeachment by the House and trial in the Senate,
where he was acquitted by a single vote. But the damage was done.
This public break with Johnson significantly boosted Grant's popularity among radical Republicans. They saw him as a man of principle, standing against a president undermining the Union victory and civil rights gains.
It firmly set the stage for his presidential nomination.
And so the path to the presidency was clear. At the 1868 Republican National Convention, delegates unanimously nominated Grant for president on the first ballot.
Although he often expressed a preference to remain in the Army, he accepted, believing he was the only one who could truly unify the deeply fractured nation.
The Republicans, under his banner, advocated for equal civil and political rights to all and, crucially, African-American enfranchisement.
The Democrats, on the other hand, nominated Horatio Seymour, vehemently opposing suffrage for African Americans and advocating immediate restoration of former Confederate states and blanket amnesty.
The election of 1868 was a clear, stark referendum on the future of Reconstruction and the rights of African Americans. During the campaign, Grant wisely sought to distance himself from his controversial 1862 General Order No. 11.
Stating publicly, "I have no prejudice against sect or race, but want each individual to be judged by his own merit."
The Republicans shrewdly adopted his words from Appomattox, "Let us have peace," as their campaign slogan, a powerful message for a war-weary nation.
Grant won the popular vote and an electoral college landslide, 214 votes to Seymour's 80. Crucially, his victory was significantly aided by an estimated 500,000 votes cast by black people, who overwhelmingly supported him,
winning him 52.7% of the popular vote. It's a sobering detail that he lost Louisiana and Georgia primarily due to widespread Ku Klux Klan violence against African American voters, a stark reminder of the immense challenges ahead.
At 46, he was the youngest president yet elected, stepping into a role that would test his leadership in entirely new ways. His victory marked a clear mandate for Reconstruction and, profoundly, for civil rights. It powerfully demonstrated the burgeoning political power of newly enfranchised African-American voters.
On March 4, 1869, Grant was sworn in as president by Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase. In his inaugural address, he urged the swift ratification of the 15th Amendment, granting African Americans suffrage.
He also called for proper treatment of Native Americans and encouraged their civilization and ultimate citizenship, a perspective we'll definitely need to unpack later.
Significantly, many African Americans attended his inauguration, a truly powerful symbol of the new era he ushered in and the hopes he represented for millions.
His inaugural address laid out a progressive and ambitious vision for a reunited nation, emphasizing civil rights for both African Americans and Native Americans. Quite forward-thinking for its time, even with the complexities around the civilization aspect.
His cabinet appointments sparked both criticism and approval. Notable figures like Hamilton Fish as Secretary of State, William W. Belknap as Secretary of War.
And in a genuine effort at reconciliation, he nominated his wartime friend, former Confederate General James Longstreet, for a surveyor of customs of New Orleans, an olive branch.
And in March 1872, Grant signed legislation establishing Yellowstone National Park, the first national park in the world. Remarkable foresight for conservation.
He was also notably sympathetic to women's rights, including suffrage, stating he wanted equal rights to all citizens. These early actions highlight a complex figure determined not only to heal the nation, but also to push for a broader, more inclusive definition of American citizenship.
And here's where we see that powerful example of personal growth regarding General Order Number 11. He appointed more than 50 Jewish people to federal office, unprecedented.
Appointed Edward S. Salomon as territorial governor of Washington, the first American Jewish man to hold a governor's seat. He also publicly supported the B'nai B'rith petition against Russian persecution of Jews.
Demonstrates a genuine, active commitment to rectifying past wrongs and establishing a legacy of religious tolerance. His actions really spoke volumes.
He was indeed considered a remarkably effective civil rights president. March 18, 1869, signed into law equal rights for black people to serve on juries and hold office in D.C.
1870, signed the Naturalization Act, extending citizenship to foreign black people, then strongly advocated for the 15th Amendment ratification.
Stated states could not disenfranchise African Americans based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Within a year, the three remaining Confederate states, Mississippi, Virginia, Texas, adopted it and were readmitted to Congress.
He even put military pressure on Georgia to reinstate its black legislators and adopt the amendment, ensuring its full implementation.
With all former Confederate states represented and the 15th Amendment ratified, the Union was, for the first time, completely restored under Grant. And crucially, for the first time, black American men served in Congress, all from southern states.
A monumental, yet tragically short-lived achievement. And this is where we see the true test of his commitment. His vigorous enforcement of civil rights and his direct confrontation with the Ku Klux Klan.
1870, Congress and Grant created the Justice Department, empowering the Attorney General and the new Solicitor General to prosecute the Klan.
Congress and Grant also passed 3 enforcement acts, specifically designed to protect black people and Reconstruction governments from intimidation and violence.
Using these powerful new legal tools, Grant launched a full-scale assault on the Klan, effectively crushing its power. By October 1871, he suspended habeas corpus in parts of South Carolina, a drastic measure, and sent federal troops to aid marshals in mass prosecutions.
His Attorney General, Amos T. Ackerman, was zealous in destroying the Klan. Arrested over 470 members in South Carolina alone, hundreds more fled the state.
The impact was profound and immediate. By 1872, the Klan's power had largely collapsed, and African Americans voted in record numbers across the South, a testament to Grant's decisive action. A monumental achievement.
Absolutely. However, as Grant entered his second term, the North began that gradual, tragic retreat from Reconstruction. Southern conservatives, the Redeemers, formed armed groups like the Red Shirts and the White League,
Openly using extreme violence, intimidation, voter fraud, and virulent racist appeals to systematically overturn Republican rule and disenfranchise black voters.
This shift in public and political will, combined with mounting challenges, created immense difficulties. Northern apathy toward black people's rights grew. The depressed economy from the Panic of 1873 consumed national attention.
And the scandals within Grant's administration made it politically difficult to maintain support for Reconstruction. Power irrevocably shifted when Democrats gained the House majority in the 1874 election.
While Grant still acted sometimes, like ending the Brooks-Baxter War in Arkansas peacefully and sending troops to New Orleans after the horrific Colfax massacre, his intervention became increasingly limited.
By 1875, as racial violence escalated in Mississippi, his Attorney General, Edwards Pierpont, told the Republican governor there that the people were, quote, tired of the autumnal outbreaks in the South, declining direct federal intervention. Grant later expressed deep regret for not issuing a proclamation to help.
Congress did pass the sweeping Civil Rights Act of 1875 to guarantee black people equal access to public facilities. However, there was little federal enforcement, and the Supreme Court ultimately ruled it unconstitutional in 1883, gutted its intent.
After Grant left office, the bitterly disputed 1876 presidential election was resolved by the Compromise of 1877. Republicans got the White House for Rutherford B. Hayes in return for ending enforcement of racial equality and critically removing federal troops from the South.
Marked the official end of Reconstruction, tragically launched 80 years of Jim Crow segregation.
This raises that critical question. Grant's commitment was clear, his actions against the Klan decisive. But the broader political and social currents ultimately undermined Reconstruction's long-term success. Highlights the profound limits of presidential power against widespread, entrenched opposition. A sobering reminder.
Beyond civil rights, Grant also tackled the challenging post-war economy, took conservative steps to return to pre-war monetary standards, signed the Public Credit Act of 1869, guaranteeing bondholders repayment in coin or its equivalent,
Committing the government to the full return of the gold standard within 10 years. His overarching policy was hard currency, economy, and gradual reduction of the national debt, fiscal conservatism.
Grant's own ideas about the economy were generally straightforward, maybe a bit simple. He relied heavily on advice from businessmen,
Believing in fiscal conservatism and sound money as the path to stability. A significant policy direction after the inflationary pressures and greenbacks issued during the war.
This simple, trusting approach, however, made him vulnerable to manipulation, as seen in the Gold Corner Conspiracy Black Friday of 1869.
Railroad tycoons Jay Gould and Jim Fisk conspired to corner the gold market, believing a high gold price would boost agricultural exports, which they'd profit from. Treasury Secretary George Boutwell's policy of selling government gold kept the price low, frustrating their scheme.
Gould and Fisk, relentless, exploited connections, cultivated a relationship with Grant's brother-in-law, Abel Corbin, gained access to the president. Gould also bribed Assistant Treasurer Daniel Butterfield for inside info.
Grant, naive regarding complex finance, was initially convinced by their arguments that a low gold price would hurt farmers. Regrettably, he reduced the sale of Treasury gold, inadvertently aiding their scheme.
September 23, gold price skyrocketed to $143.18. Boutwell rushed to the White House, spoke urgently with Grant, explained the manipulation.
The very next day, September 24, Black Friday, Grant ordered Boutwell to sell $4 million in government gold. The market immediately collapsed, prices plummeted, Gould and Fisk fled, leaving widespread economic damages.
An 1870 congressional investigation ultimately cleared Grant of personal profiteering, but excoriated Gould and Fisk for manipulation, and Corbin for shamelessly exploiting his connection.
This incident clearly highlighted Grant's trusting nature and inexperience in complex financial matters, a significant early challenge to his administration's integrity, even if he was personally cleared, showed how honesty could be exploited.
His presidency also saw the Panic of 1873, a major economic downturn. Grant signed the Coinage Act of 1873, effectively ending bimetallism and establishing the gold dollar as the sole monetary standard.
This led to deflation, which Silverites advocating for unlimited silver coinage denounced as the crime of 1873, claiming it made debts more burdensome for farmers.
Then, September 1873, the collapse of J. Cook and Company, a major New York brokerage house, triggered the Panic of 1873. Many banks, railroads went bankrupt, ushered in a prolonged economic depression.
Grant, still knowing little about finance intricacies, consulted businessmen, initially believing the panic was just a fluctuation, like the gold ring collapse. He instructed the Treasury to buy $10 million in government bonds, which curbed the initial panic, but the long depression swept the nation.
Shows how even a strong leader can struggle with complex economic forces beyond their understanding. In 1874, Congress, hoping inflation would stimulate the economy by adding $64 million in greenbacks, passed the ferry bill.
Despite warnings a veto would hurt Republicans in elections, Grant firmly believed the bill would destroy national credit and courageously vetoed it.
solidified his position in the Republican conservative faction, committed the party to a gold-backed dollar. He later pressured Congress for a bill to strengthen the dollar, signing the Specie Payment Resumption Act in 1875.
Required reduction of greenbacks, redemption for gold starting January 1st, 1879. Cemented his hard money policies. Grant's consistent stance on gold was a hallmark.
This era, post-Civil War, brought massive industrial wealth, government expansion, rampant speculation, and, unfortunately, pervasive corruption in federal offices.
And this brings us to the most criticized aspect of his presidency, the pervasive scandals. Grant was by nature honest, trusting, maybe gullible, and fiercely loyal to his friends.
And what's truly fascinating here is how these very personal virtues, his loyalty and trusting nature, sometimes became profound vulnerabilities in the political arena, inadvertently created an environment ripe for corruption.
His responses to malfeasance were mixed. Sometimes he appointed reformers. Other times he staunchly defended culprits, even when evidence mounted. He struggled deeply to perceive corruption in those close to him.
He genuinely believed in the goodness and loyalty of people, and that admirable trait made him susceptible. This dichotomy is central to understanding his presidential legacy.
He did make efforts at reform, though, appointed Jacob D. Cox as Secretary of the Interior, who implemented significant civil service reforms. In 1871, Grant created the first Civil Service Commission.
Established rules for competitive exams, classified positions, advanced civil service more than any prior president. But when Congress failed to make the rules permanent, Grant regrettably dissolved the commission in 1874.
He also replaced corrupt New York collector Thomas Murphy with Chester A. Arthur, who, ironically, later became president and implemented further reforms. He fired warehouse owner George K. Leet for pocketing exorbitant freight fees.
1873, he signed the Salary Grab Act, increasing pay for federal employees, Congress retroactively causing uproar, judiciary, and president doubling his own salary. Critics derided Congress's retroactive payments. Law was partially repealed, but Grant kept his much-needed raise.
His efforts were significant, showing a desire to clean up government. But the sheer scale of corruption was overwhelming, often involving people he trusted implicitly. A challenging time.
And here's one of the biggest challenges: the whiskey ring scandal of 1875. Benjamin Bristow, Grant's new Treasury Secretary, discovered notorious collusion between distillers and Treasury officials to evade millions in taxes.
Grant unequivocally endorsed the investigation, famously writing, "Let no guilty man escape." Federal marshals raided 32 installations, leading to 110 convictions, $3.15 million in fines. A massive crackdown.
But then the investigation revealed Grant's private secretary, Orville E. Babcock, same Babcock from Santo Domingo, received kickbacks, secretly forewarned the ring's mastermind.
Grant, exhibiting that deep personal loyalty, refused to believe Babcock was guilty. Gave a deposition in his defense, stating his confidence was unshaken.
Babcock was ultimately acquitted but later dismissed from the White House staff, though he kept another federal position. Shows Grant's blind spot.
There were other damaging scandals, too. Interior Department under Columbus Delano rife with fraud, forced resignation. Attorney General George H. Williams fired after an extortion scandal involving his wife.
And most damaging, Secretary of War William W. Belknap took quarterly kickbacks from traderships at military forts. Resigned February 1876, impeached by House, acquitted by Senate, but a severe blow. Even Grant's brother Orville received kickbacks.
In his December 5, 1876 annual message, Grant delivered that poignant apology. Failures have been errors of judgment, not of intent.
And that's the core insight, isn't it? While Grant's personal integrity was largely recognized, his trusting nature and loyalty, combined with rapid government expansion, created an environment ripe for corruption. His genuine reform efforts were ultimately overshadowed,
Tragically shaping how his presidency was viewed for decades. Shifting to foreign policy, Grant had limited experience, wisely relied heavily on his talented Secretary of State, Hamilton Fish.
They developed a cordial, trusting friendship. Grant had an expansionist impulse, strong advocate of the Monroe Doctrine, also had an idealist side, appointing Benjamin Picsoto as consul in Bucharest.
Responding to Romanian persecution of Jews, stating, "Respect for human rights is the first duty for those set as rulers." Remarkably progressive.
This blend of idealism and pragmatic expansionism defined his foreign policy, often through Fish's capable hands. Their relationship was a true strength.
A crucial diplomatic challenge was settling the Alabama claims. Damages caused to Union merchant ships by the CSS Alabama, built in a British shipyard, violating neutrality. Major contention.
Senator Charles Sumner led demands for exorbitant reparations, even suggesting British Columbia as payment.
Fish and Treasury Secretary Boutwell, however, convinced Grant peaceful, strong relations with Britain were essential, led to painstaking negotiations.
To avoid jeopardizing these sensitive talks, Grant notably refrained from recognizing Cuban rebels fighting for independence from Spain, maintained consistency.
The Treaty of Washington in 1871 was a major diplomatic achievement. International Tribunal settled damages at $15.5 million. British expressed regret, not fault. Senate approved.
Peaceful resolution, Grant's most successful foreign policy achievement, resolved troubled Anglo-American issues, laid groundwork for Britain becoming America's strongest ally, masterclass in patient diplomacy.
Not all ventures were successful, though. The Korean expedition of 1871, a diplomatic failure. Grant dispatched forces to open trade, investigate disappearance of the SS General Sherman.
Korean garrisons fired on American ships, government refused negotiations. Admiral John Rogers' forces destroyed several Korean forts, 250 Koreans killed to 3 Americans.
Expedition failed to open trade, only strengthened Korea's isolationist policy. Costly lesson in gunboat diplomacy limits.
Grant also initiated that plan to annex Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. Genuinely believed it offered benefits. Resources, naval protection, stopping slavery elsewhere, even a safe haven for black people escaping the KKK.
He sent his military aide, Orville Babcock, to evaluate. Babcock returned with unauthorized annexation treaties. Typical Babcock.
This plan was fiercely obstructed by Senator Charles Sumner, chairman of Senate Foreign Relations. Grant believed Sumner approved after a meeting, but disputed. Despite Grant's personal lobbying, Senate defeated the treaties.
Grant, outraged by perceived betrayal, retaliated, sacked John Lothrop Motley, Sumner's friend, as minister to Great Britain, maneuvered to have Sumner deposed from his powerful chairmanship.
The stinging controversy overshadowed other diplomacy, drew criticism for relying on military personnel like Babcock for sensitive policy.
Another major crisis, Cuba and the Virginius Affair in 1873. American policy under Grant was neutrality during Cuba's 10 years' war against Spain, refused to recognize rebels, endorsed Spanish rule while calling for abolition of slavery there.
Delicate policy aimed to protect commerce, maintain peace. Broke October 1873 when a Spanish cruiser captured the U.S.-flagged merchant ship Virginius, carrying supplies to insurrectionists.
Spanish authorities brutally executed 53 prisoners, including 8 Americans, mutilated bodies, outraged calls for war from the American public.
Grant ordered U.S. Navy warships to Cuba, clear show of force. But Secretary Fish reached a peaceful resolution. Spain expressed regret, surrendered the ship, paid $80,000 to families, averted war.
Testament to Fish's cool head, Grant's willingness to seek peaceful solutions when possible, even facing intense public emotion.
Grant and Fish also secured a free trade treaty with Hawaii in 1875, incorporated its sugar industry into U.S. economic sphere. King Kalakaua made a historic 91-day state visit to secure it.
First reigning monarch on U.S. soil. Despite opposition from Southern Democrats protecting sugar producers and others calling Hawaiians an inferior race, the bill passed. U.S. gained lands for what became Pearl Harbor.
Far-sighted treaty underscored America's growing economic, strategic interests in the Pacific, set stage for future expansion.
Turning to his federal Indian policy. Context. 1869, over 250,000 Native Americans governed by 370, often poorly enforced treaties. Grant's faith influenced his peace policy. Believed Creator didn't place races first stronger to destroy weaker.
Admirable sentiment, but he was mostly an assimilationist. Wanted Native Americans to adopt European customs, language, government, leading to eventual citizenship. Said he'd favor any course towards civilization, Christianization, and ultimate citizenship.
In a remarkably progressive move for the time, Grant appointed Ely S. Parker, assimilated Seneca, a wartime staff member, as Commissioner of Indian Affairs, first Native American in this high post.
1869, Grant signed legislation establishing unpaid Board of Indian Commissioners, reduce corruption, oversee peace policy, replace corrupt agents with missionaries, protect Native Americans on reservations, educate them in farming.
But despite intentions, policy faced setbacks. Maria's Massacre, 1870, Parker's resignation, 1871, due to congressional pressure, infighting among religious agents, entrenched economic interests profiting from exploitation.
1871, significant shift. Grant effectively ended sovereign tribal treaty system. By law, individual Native Americans deemed wards of federal government losing tribal sovereignty.
Fundamental change, moving away from recognizing them as sovereign nations, profound, lasting negative consequences.
Modoc War, 1873, North California. Major General Edward Canby killed by Modoc leader Kent Pwash during peace talks. Grant ordered restraint, but Army captured Kent Pwash, convicted of murder, hanged, sometimes dated as the beginning of Indian Wars.
1874, Grant pocket vetoed bill protecting bison. Supported Interior Secretary Columbus Delano, who believed killing bison would force Plains Indians to abandon nomadic lifestyle, effectively using a natural resource as a brutal policy tool for assimilation.
Illustrates complex, sometimes contradictory aspect, desire for peace assimilation, but willingness to employ brutal methods for perceived civilization. Tragic clash of cultures.
Then the Great Sioux War, 1876. Sparked by gold discovery in sacred Black Hills, treaty-protected lands, rush of white settlers trespassing.
Grant told Sioux leaders to make arrangements to allow white persons to go into the Black Hills. Children attend schools, speak English, prepare for the life of white men, pushing assimilation again.
Under advice from General Sheridan, Grant effectively agreed not to enforce minor exclusion from Black Hills, forcing Native Americans onto Sioux Reservation. Policy led to warriors under Crazy Horse massacring Custer and his men at Little Bighorn.
Grant publicly castigated Custer. I regard Custer's massacre as a sacrifice of troops brought on by Custer himself that was wholly unnecessary.
Grant then persuaded tribes to relinquish Black Hills in 1876. Congress ratified agreement before he left office. Despite Grant's peace efforts, over 200 battles fought with Native Americans during his presidency.
Policy, though considered humanitarian then compared to outright extermination, now heavily criticized for assimilationist goals, disregard for tribal cultures, sovereignty.
However, policy did ensure Indian affairs remained under Interior Department, not War Department, after his presidency. Shift in administrative approach, even if goals problematic.
After his eventful, often tumultuous presidency, Grant famously remarked he was never so happy in my life upon leaving the White House in 1877.
With some funds from liquidating an investment, Grant and Julia embarked on that grand 2.5-year world tour, first American president to circumnavigate the globe.
Far more than a leisurely trip. Stops across Europe, Africa, India, Middle East, Far East. Met Queen Victoria, Tsar Alexander II, Pope Leo XIII, Bismarck, Emperor Meiji.
Hay's administration encouraged Grant to assume unofficial diplomatic role. Strengthened American interests abroad. Tour demonstrated U.S. was emerging world power. Returned to San Francisco, 1879, greeted by cheering crowds, hero once more.
His renewed popularity led to that unexpected, ultimately unsuccessful bid for a third term in 1880. Politically conservative, supported by Stalwart's faction, led by old ally Roscoe Conkling.
Saw his renewed popularity as opportunity for third term, direct challenge to unofficial two-term rule, bold move. Grant publicly said nothing, privately encouraged his men. Wanted the job.
At 1880 Republican National Convention, Conkling nominated Grant with eloquent speech. When asked which state he hails from, our sole reply shall be, he hails from Appomattox and its famous apple tree.
Despite leading initial ballots, couldn't secure a majority. Opponents rallied against third-term precedent. After 36 ballots, delegates nominated compromise candidate James A. Garfield.
Grant, loyal Republican, supporting Garfield, later wept upon learning of Garfield's assassination in 1881.
This post-presidency period also saw his devastating financial ruin. Stark testament to precariousness of life even for former president then. No federal pensions. Grant's income mere $6,000 a year, depleted by world tour.
Wealthy friends bought him house in NYC. Chartered Mexican Southern Railroad with Jay Gould, but venture failed spectacularly after Senate rejected free trade treaty.
Then Grant's most devastating financial blow. Grant and Ward scandal, 1884. Profoundly illustrates how his trusting nature remained a vulnerability. 1883, son Buck opened Wall Street brokerage with Ferdinand Ward.
A conniving man running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Grant, keen to secure family's future, joined firm, invested $100,000 of his own money, equivalent to $2.78 million in 2023.
Ward's deception inevitably led to firm's impending bankruptcy. Ward, cynically assuming Grant was a child in business matters, assured him temporary shortfall.
Grant, desperate, approached William Henry Vanderbilt, who gave him personal loan of $150,000. Grant invested it, wasn't enough. Collapse triggered Panic of 1884.
Vanderbilt offered to forgive debt entirely, but Grant, compelled by unyielding personal honor, refused. Impoverished, distraught, repaid what he could, selling Civil War mementos.
Vanderbilt took title to Grant's home, allowed Grants to reside there rent-free, pledged to donate souvenirs to federal government, insisted debt paid. Grant, utterly devastated, asked privately how he could ever trust any human being again.
Testified against Warden Fish, March 1885. Outpouring of national sympathy followed.
Summer 1884, Grant complained of sore throat. Late October, diagnosed with throat cancer, possibly from frequent cigar smoking. Bravely kept seriousness from Julia.
Learned grim truth from doctor. Knowing his desperate financial difficulties, Congress finally restored him to rank of General of the Army with full retirement pay. Corrected anomaly from resigning commission.
Congressional act, not enough. Nearly penniless, consumed by worry about providing for wife after death, Grant began writing articles for the Century magazine.
His loyal friend Mark Twain, understanding Grant's dire state, recognizing literary talent, offered unheard of 70% royalty for his memoirs, compared to magazine standard 10%.
Grant, facing own mortality, worked intensely on memoirs in NYC. Covered life through Civil War, assisted by Adam Badeau's son Frederick. Moved to cottage in Mount McGregor, NY, finished memoir July 18, 1885, just days before death.
The personal memoirs of U.S. Grant became immediate critical commercial success. Julia Grant eventually received about $450,000 royalties, equivalent to $15.7 million in 2024. Secured her financial future.
Memoir highly regarded by public, military historians, literary critics, Grant portrayed himself as honorable Western hero, candidly depicting battles against Confederates, internal Army foes. Powerful example of controlling narratives, securing families' future in dire circumstances.
Extraordinary act of will, literary genius. Written under immense pressure, battling terminal illness, cemented own legacy, powerful first-hand account, ensured family security, final, profound victory.
Grant died in Mount McGregor Cottage, July 23, 1885. Commanding General Sheridan ordered day-long tribute. President Cleveland ordered 30-day nationwide mourning.
250,000 viewed body in NYC. Tens of thousands veterans marched in funeral procession. Over 1.5 million attendees. Massive display of national grief, respect.
Profoundly powerful symbol of national unity. Pallbearers included Union Generals Sherman, Sheridan, and remarkably, Confederate Generals Simon Bolivar Buckner, Joseph E. Johnston, demonstrating depth of post-war reconciliation.
President Cleveland, 2 former presidents attended. Body laid to rest in Riverside Park, NYC, eventually in General Grant National Memorial, Grant's tomb. Largest mausoleum in North America, his death funeral became national spectacle, moment of reflection, symbol of reconciliation.
Grant initially hailed across North as general who saved the Union. Military reputation largely held up. Most successful general, Union or Confederate.
However, reputation suffered soon after death. Significantly damaged by lost cause mythology, spread by Confederate sympathizers romanticizing defeat, and Dunning School historians resenting his defeat of Lee. Strong Reconstruction enforcement.
Reputation fell further early 20th century due to WWI casualties recalling 1864 Virginia casualties and Harding administration scandals recalling Grant's own issues. For decades, often seen as unsuccessful president, unskilled, if lucky, general.
What truly stands out here is how historical perspectives evolve. Beginning 1950s, accelerating dramatically 21st century with new scholarship from historians like Ron Chernow, Grant's reputation improved markedly.
Reassessed not as brute force victor, but skillful modern strategist, truly exceptional commander understanding total nature of warfare.
Modern views of his presidency now show better appreciation of his personal integrity, vigorous enforcement of civil voting rights for African Americans, genuinely intended peace policy toward Native Americans, even when flawed.
2021 C-SPAN survey ranked Grant 20th out of 44 presidents. Significant jump from 33rd in 2017, attributed to receiving more credit for Reconstruction and his diplomacy than condemnation for his alleged corruption.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Grant's changing legacy powerfully demonstrates the ongoing, often politically charged process of historical interpretation, underscores importance of continuously revisiting primary sources, diverse perspectives. History isn't static, it's a living dialogue.
We've journeyed through the remarkable life of Ulysses S. Grant, from humble beginnings, profound civilian struggles marked by poverty, personal challenge, to military genius on Civil War battlefields.
We've seen him as president, deeply committed to civil rights, national unity, battling corruption within his own administration, navigating complex foreign domestic policies.
We also witnessed his post-presidency challenges, culminating in that powerful act of literary redemption securing his family's legacy.
Grant's story is a profound reminder that even celebrated figures are complex, multifaceted individuals, shaped by their times, own human flaws, encourages us to look beyond simplistic narratives of hero or villain, appreciate full spectrum.
His resilience facing immense personal, financial hardship, unwavering commitment to vision of reunited America, efforts to secure civil rights for African Americans facing overwhelming opposition offer powerful, enduring lessons.
Absolutely.
And this raises an important question for all of us. Given the dramatic shifts in Grant's historical reputation and the active, often politically motivated efforts to tarnish his legacy by those disagreeing with his progressive policies, how should we approach stories of other figures whose place in history is debated or deliberately misrepresented?
What responsibility do we as informed citizens have in seeking out and promoting a balanced, evidence-based understanding of the past, especially when those narratives continue to shape our present and influence our future?
Something to think about.